Hello and welcome to Find Your Freedom, a podcast dedicated to helping you truly find freedom in all aspects of life. Join your hosts and their expert guests as they share practical tips and strategies for finding more freedom in your life. It's time to take control of your life and create the future you want. Let's find your freedom. Here are your hosts, Lenny the Boss and Omid Rad Investor.
Boom, boom, boom. We are back with another episode of Find Your Freedom. And we're going to get into something today where the only time I ever been to this place was when I played Monopoly. So outside of that, we're going to talk about this place, man. And you're going to get some really insightful information. But before we jump there, this show is being brought to you by Wealth Builders Mortgage Group, which is important. I'm going to tell you, I use them, Omid uses them, and they can help you with short-term rentals. They can help you with long-term rentals. They can help you with buying your own personal home. Hey, the guest we have on today, Wealth Builders Mortgage Group helped her purchase one of her thousands of homes that she purchased. All right, so let's get into it. Listen, so we got Toni. Toni is a licensed Kentucky real estate agent who specializes in short-term rentals in the Bourbon Trail area in central Kentucky. See, Kentucky on the Monopoly board for me was awesome. You used to bring me a whole bunch of money. So we're going to jump into Kentucky. So Toni, she also owns short-term rentals herself. She manages other people's properties for her clients. She mentors, she coaches, and ultimately she finds you the best property for that investor anywhere in the United States, and more importantly, whoever want to invest into Kentucky. So Toni, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Before we came on, we always talk before, and I'm sitting here doing the song, Toni, feel good, and that's Toni's feeling. So when you're in Toni's atmosphere, and we met in Pigeon Forge, correct? For the first time.
But before that, we met in Texas.
And we met in Texas. Yes, correct. Yes, we met in Texas as well.
Yep.
But the feeling you get around Toni, that song, it should be like, what you call it, your band music,
I had that cassette where I would stick my finger in and reel it back.
Because honestly, you do.
Yeah.
You have that type of personality, and I think that's really cool. And I want people to know that, and that's another reason that you're successful in what you do outside of being smart. You got that personality that gels with individuals to jump into it. So before we jump into Kentucky and all the promises Kentucky can bring, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you was born and raised, and go from there.
Okay. Toni Boer here. I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, which is about 30 minutes or so outside of where I currently live. Most people who are born and raised in Louisville don't want to stay in Louisville. Haha. But today I'm married to Andrew Boer, and we have 5 children. We're a blended family. I came to the marriage with 3 kids, and Andrew came with 2. We don't have any shared children other than our dogs. But we are living the dream in the real estate world and absolutely loving it. And 2023, my husband left his longtime career in an industry that he thought would be his lifelong industry and joined me on the real estate train. And together we've grown that together as a husband and wife business, and just as another partnership aside from myself independently.
Great.
Awesome. Oh.
I got the dog going on. Dog got some questions.
Yes, the dog has questions. So something, Toni, that I learned about you a year, maybe 2 years ago, that I thought was really fascinating was your conviction to short-term rental buyers. So tell the story that you told me about when you were in real estate at that first brokerage and they just didn't see your dream. But yeah, tell me that one.
It's, I only do short-term rental real estate. I don't do traditional real estate at all. And so that is a slippery slope in this business, just in general, to carry your license and not do traditional real estate. And so I have been at a brokerage where it just wasn't I don't want to say it wasn't welcomed. It was just not supported. It was questioned a lot. It was considered very risky. It wasn't understood. I was pushed in just different directions than what I really wanted to go in. And being in this industry, as we all know, we have to like stand strong footed. And that's something that you have to learn really fast in real estate, especially with investments. And so I had to find my backbone of like who I was and the direction that I wanted to go in as an individual and where I was going to grow my business. So that was really important to me. So I did switch brokerages. And now it's really peaceful because I'm super supported and I have all of the back end supports that matter.
That's awesome. Now, how long have you been doing this, though?
Since 2019, I got my license, and which was really interesting because prior to that, I had an interior design background, and I was staging houses, very, very part time for other real estate agents who were getting ready to list homes, and I was a stay-at-home mom, raising kids, and I was divorced, I was single for a while, I had no funds. And I think that people who know me know a part of my backstory that they find that relatable because there was a time in my life just about 8 or 9 years ago where I had $75 a week to buy groceries for me and 3 kids.
Wow.
That'll make me cry.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
it's still very true to me. Like it still is very near to me because I'll never forget what that's like. So when I hear people's stories and like where they're getting started and like they're starting on this journey and how important, like when they bear hug their money and like they got a pay raise or they got an inheritance and they've got this money and they want to invest in short-term rentals and they're trusting me in the Kentucky market to spend that money well. Don't think for a second that I'm not like going back to like, oh my gosh, I know what that feels like to like hug money and know what that feels like and the importance of to spend money right.
Wow. That's very touching. So how did you get into short-term rentals?
My husband before me and with me, we have renovated houses and we have lived in homes and flipped them basically every 2 years. And so when I got my license, we bought our first short-term rental. Also, I had to talk him into it. He had gotten it, he had gotten a bonus at his W-2 job. And we did not want to invest it in the stock market. We were looking for different ways other than the traditional ways to invest that money. And so I was, pushing him to put that money in basically like a second home within a few hours of where we currently lived. And, we were planning on taking our family there every weekend or like, someplace where we didn't have to drive 5 hours or fly or anything like that. And we did. We jumped in. We went way in over our heads. We had to borrow more money than we needed to because the renovation went sideways at one point because of things that needed done. And so I didn't know if we were going to go bankrupt. I didn't know what I had just jumped into. And so with that, anyway, we got the renovation done. We went live on a Tuesday. We had our first guest on Friday. That was back in 2020. And, the hit of COVID had come and we were kind of at the getting out of the tail end of that. And so I fell in love with the hospitality. I fell in love with the communication with the guest, with hosting, with taking care of the property, with hearing why people were coming to Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And with that, we couldn't stay at our own house. We had just bought a second home that we thought we were going to be able to go to with our kids and get away for the weekend or whatever. And we couldn't because it was so booked. And so that was our first introduction with it. And then I was like, okay, I had just gotten my real estate license just prior to that. And I was dabbling with traditional real estate, with traditional clients. And I wasn't really feeling it because it was, I want my kids to be in this school district. We got to be close to this church. We got to be in this neighborhood. And that wasn't where my heart was. And I was heartbroken myself because I knew that traditional real estate wasn't for me. But with our first short-term rental, I was loving the hospitality. I was loving the tourism. I was loving meeting tourism directors and all of these people who I've built relationships with since then. And I said, this is it. This is what I'm going to build my business on. And here we are.
And I can speak to Tony's hospitality. So my daughter and I went to see the Pink concert up in Louisville last year.
Okay.
And Tony was like, "Oh my God, let's meet for dinner." And so I was like, "Okay, that sounds great." And she just showed us a great time, took us to a great, where was that? What was that called?
Got Crows in Louisville.
Okay, yeah, great. I mean, great company, and her hospitality, just the fact that she would take the time to meet us in that little window before the concert was amazing. So yeah, and I know she does that with a lot of her clients, and I would definitely say Tony is a hospitality queen for sure.
Thank you. I love it. I love it when people come to Kentucky. I just, I grew up here, and so I kind of it became just so super normal to drive past the distilleries and Churchill Downs and all of these things that people come in from all over the world to see and experience. And just, like for me, I'm a beach girl. I love warmth and the beach. And so I take my hard-earned money and I go south. But these other people from all over the world, they're coming and they're bringing their hard-earned money and coming to Kentucky. And it just like makes me so happy and sharing that with them. And so it's just been from that first house, I think we're at 8 now. So
good. Awesome. So tell us about Kentucky a little bit, because like I said, Kentucky did very well for me when I was on play Monopoly. So that's one of the properties I always try to get is Kentucky. But honestly, Toni, it never dawned on me to say, let me investigate what Kentucky has to offer and let me go out there. And I know Parker and I was talking earlier, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people just a place that does not pop in people's head. So I guess enlighten us on what Kentucky has to offer, why people are coming.
That's a great question, because even at the conferences that I go to and just talking to people in general, they don't know anything about the Bourbon Trail. They might not be bourbon connoisseurs or, big bourbon people, but they are super interested in it. And so a lot of people don't know 95% of all the world's bourbon is made here in Kentucky. We're the saddlebred capital of the world. We've got Mammoth Cave. That's the longest cave system in the world. We've got Red River Gorge. That's a great rock climbing place that people come and enjoy. So there's many drivers that are bringing people here. It's becoming a wedding destination. People get married in the barns and things like that. But as well, there's over 100 distilleries. We know the major branded ones, but outside of that, Kentucky's in the top 10 winery destinations.
Oh,
and
really?
So, yep. And so oftentimes our guests are couples who are traveling together. And so the women will go and do the wineries together, and then they meet back up with the guys after a day of distilleries and golf. Great golf courses are here. And last year, the Kentucky Department for Tourism did a study, and it showed that the average guest age is over 40 years old, and the average household income for those same people are over $100,000. So we're seeing a more distinguished and sophisticated group of people, and not really so much as families or, younger people doing stupid stuff in your properties like we hear about in other markets. And so for me, I think that that's one of the reasons why I love this market so much, is because we've got great guests. If things go wrong at the house, they're a little bit older, it doesn't scare them, it doesn't freak them out. They're not going to leave you a 1-star review. Oftentimes they are very helpful. And so it's been a multitude of things that I think makes the Bourbon Trail successful. I think, housing is affordable, more so in other markets. Parker and I work together quite a bit with mutual clients, and, they've got to spend $1 million in other markets to get what they are getting here. And that's for revenue, size, all the things. And so they're discovering it, that their money goes farther here, and their revenue, their profits are higher.
Yeah. And that's something that caught my attention a few years ago when it started becoming popular. I was like, okay. But I'll be honest, I heard Kentucky and I was like, what's in Kentucky? Like Kentucky. It's like, I think of Kentucky as, and it's terrible, but I'm sure other people think this way too. I know they have, because I've mentioned it to other people and they're like, Kentucky. You think like Dukes of Hazzard, right?
Thanks, Parker.
I mean, like what's in Kentucky, like old rusted out cars, and that's terrible. It's terrible. I think that way.
It's how we think of West Virginia.
Do we think of West Virginia, which is a new rising market? That's right. And so, so my daughter, when we drove from Knoxville to Louisville, and it was beautiful. I forgot about all the money and horses and Lexington. And then Louisville's huge. Louisville's like 650,000 people there, and great metro downtown area. I mean, really cool. So just beautiful landscape, beautiful areas. And then my husband, I was trying to tell my husband this, and he's like, "What's in Kentucky?" And just the other day, he bought he's obsessed with Old Hickory furniture. And so he found an Old Hickory table set, and he went to Kentucky to pick it up. And he's like, he's like, "Kentucky's really pretty." And I was like, "I know, I was trying to tell you that." So I feel like it's still a hidden gem. And then being on the lending side, I get to see people's returns, profits with their properties in Kentucky and others. And one thing I can vouch for definitely from the lending side is that the purchase prices versus the gross incomes that I'm actually seeing on paper, or it's an excellent market. It really is. So yeah, until everybody hears this and goes out and buys and drives up the prices, I think it's still really well priced. So
you know what? I just want to add to that, because I have people ask me that, like, "Oh, it's going to get saturated and there's so many people buying there and this and that." But the cool thing with this area is that it's huge. It's about 10 different counties. And so it's not like there's 100 distilleries in one town. Like, we're not thinking about Disney World in Florida, where you have to be 3 minutes away from Disney World or your property's not going to do very well. The Bourbon Trail is over 100 miles. It's 10 different counties. And so you think, I was at a board meeting just a couple of weeks ago, and they had 43 short-term rentals in a county.
Wow.
That's nothing.
43,
and I can guarantee you that of those 43 short-term rentals, 25 to 30 of them look like grandma died last week.
Nice.
And so, they're not professional. They're decorated poorly. They don't have the amenities that we talk about putting in our places and things like that. So really, if 10 or 15 places are just your competition, that's nothing. And it doesn't always have to be out of this world amenities. It's not like, in Gatlinburg, where you have to have a indoor in-ground pool, or you have to have $100,000 worth of other amenities. The bar isn't set very high here. And I don't mean that in a bad, low-key, low-class way.
No.
It's just that you don't have to have $100,000 worth of amenities or the indoor in-ground pool. So
yeah,
it's much more affordable all the way around.
All right. Well, Tony, let's help somebody out. So let's think about it like this. Okay. So we have a person who want to invest. They listen to our episode. They're like, "Oh man, Tony, she sounds great. I'm gonna reach out to her." And so what price ranges are we talking about? That's the first question of homes, and then the second question is, how much money we're talking about to fix grandma's old home.
So I have a little motto that 350 to 700,000 is the honey hole. I realize that's a pretty large gap, but if you're buying a $350,000 house, you might have to do light renovations, paint, flooring, maybe change out a countertop. You can get it there and do really well with it. You can make 80 to 100, maybe even a little bit more off of that property. You move upwards to 500, 700,000, you're probably going to get a larger property, more bedroom count. It might already have a pool. It might have an outbuilding that you can make into a game room. You're going to have just more space overall that you can kind of, take on with that. The people with the higher budgets, obviously they're more able usually to put more money into if the kitchen needs to be renovated or redo the bathrooms and things like that, because they're usually a little bit more seasoned. It's not your first time investor that's buying a $700,000 property to get started with, especially in a market that they're unfamiliar with. Right. So you can buy a $350,000, $400,000 property and still make around $100,000 if it's done well. And that sounds like a unicorn to so many people in other markets, because they've spent nearly $1 million on a property to make $100,000. Mm-hmm. And right. Parker has seen that, mm-hmm. With helping me with clients and, even helping us.
I have seen
So-
all the financials.
So Toni,
It's like sharing your underwear drawer.
Yeah.
uh-oh.
One thing I can vouch for too is just by saying that, Toni and her husband, I think, do a great job, and they do a great job with their properties and their own revenue. So, just like in another episode, when we talked to Nate Gort, he was saying, hey, one of the most important things you can do in talking to a lender is work with somebody who owns properties themselves. And I think that's so true also with real estate agents. I think somebody who's walking the walk and in the thick of it with you is going to be the best one to help you really understand how to put these things together. They've been there, done that. They're invested in this market and really knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so true. So, man, I mean, look, we got individuals, that's going to be looking, and I didn't know the Bourbon Trail was, I'm thinking in my mind, once again, I'm saying trail, using that word, and it's like one major street that might go 6 or 7 blocks, but you're saying it's all over. So what are some of the key amenities, like in the Smokies? You got to have at least a hot tub, or no one's booking your place. So what are the key amenities that are must haves when you purchase a property out in the Kentucky?
This is what I tell people, especially those of us who are over 40 years old. What would you want? I mean, like, I'm 44. So what are things that I would want as a 40-plus-year-old person? Because that's our market. That's our guest avatar of people who are coming here is 40-plus-year-old people for the the majority. And so hot tub is a must to keep your revenue high. Even things like a sauna or a massage chair, poker table, shuffleboard, poker table, pool table, a pool if the house has a pool. But I do not encourage anyone to buy a property here and then go spend 60, 80, 100,000 to put a pool in. If the house comes with it, that's great. You'll do great in the summertime. But the tours start at the distilleries at 9 a.m. Your people aren't really booking your house to stay there like we do in a beach market and some other markets, cabins where they get there, they go to the grocery store, and then they're there for days on end. That's not how really this market is. They're up and out of your house, gone by 8, 9 in the morning. They don't come back until 6, 7 at night. They're not really cooking there. So when they get back, their feet hurt. They've been walking all day. They've had some drinks. They've had dinner. So they want to get in the hot tub. They want to play a quick game of pool or get in the massage chair or something like that. So it really doesn't have to be huge or super expensive. Just last year, I started adding honey to my coffee station. That doesn't cost me a lot of money. It wasn't a huge thing. And I thought, well, I had recently stayed at an Airbnb and they had honey at their coffee station. I love honey. And so I thought, I'm going to do that for my places. It immediately showed up in my reviews that Toni has thought of everything. She even had these little 1-ounce jars of honey. And I had raised my prices like $25 a night just because I added these little 1-ounce jars of honey. And so it's the little things that us old people appreciate.
It's true.
Hold on now. Talk for yourself. I'm in that same age group, but I'm not old at all.
That's not what you say when you wake up in the morning and your ankles are crackling and
Hey, listen,
Yes.
that's all behind the scenes stuff.
Lenny, is this where we mentioned black don't crack?
Boom! There you go. That's a good one.
That's right. Lenny's always forever young.
Forever young. Yes.
So just thinking outside of the box, for what your property has comfort. People have an idea of what Kentucky is representing to them. If they're coming from California, if they're coming from a big city, they just think Southern hospitality. They just have this image. So super contemporary, modern styles don't really do well here. So it's just thinking outside of the box of what do you think of when you think of Kentucky? You probably think of Southern and, things like that and farmhouses. And, I've had people think that we all have horse farms and we all have cows and, that's all that we are here. And so it's just, you kind of have to play into a little bit of that with what your property is giving them. If it's in Louisville or Lexington, you can get by with more bright colors and bunk beds and things like that. But, a 40-plus-year-old person doesn't want to sleep in a bunk bed, especially when they're traveling in couples. So king and queen beds are very important here. The bigger cities, they see bachelor, bachelorette parties, but outside of that, it's, we don't see that. So
what, how many of your clients that come out, because you have a lot that fly out to you, to come and see, how many of them would you say are surprised at what they see when they actually get to drive around the area? Do you get that a lot?
They all have loved it. Just over the years that I've been doing this and have had clients come out, they all have said that they love it so much more once they get here versus just what I've told them and, sent them links to see and stuff like that, much more than like what Google and, internet articles and things like that can tell them. But they get here and they go to the distilleries and we hang out and I show them different things. Every single distillery is different. And unique and just offers so many different, cool things. And so they absolutely are so happy that they spent a little bit of money, came out here and played tourists for a day. And then, so usually I ask for 2 to 3 days when a client comes out. One day we'll play tourist and we'll do some distilleries and some other things. And then we'll have a day or day and a half of showing houses.
Nice.
That's pretty cool. That's very cool. So you said that there was, did you say over 100 counties?
Oh, 10 to 12.
10. No, I'm sorry.
Over
10 to
100
12
distilleries.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I had that. Okay. So what about regulations out there? So are there regulations out in every county, or are some counties better than others? Do you have that issue out there in Kentucky?
There are regulations. Most of them do require you to get a permit. So 7 of our properties, personally, we have permits. You go to the board meeting, you have to turn in an application the month before, usually, to get on the next month's docket. You do have to be present, and you come in and you're applying for a short-term rental permit for that property. Some areas, like Frankfort, is boxy. That particular town, some areas you can't have short-term rentals in. Some areas you have to have a permit. Some areas you don't have to have a permit. You just register it, do your inspection, and you're done. So overall, the majority of the areas, you do have to have some sort of permit or business license. There are 2 counties of those that don't have to have a permit. It's kind of the wild, wild west in those counties, and you don't have to do anything. They ask you to pay your transient tax and you're good to go. But overall, Louisville and Lexington are very regulated. I tell people all the time, I do not want to sell you a house in Louisville or Lexington. You could check every box. You think you're going to get your permit, and those people wake up on the wrong side of the bed and you get denied.
Wow.
So, those are the 2 bigger cities. It's very political. A lot of the politicians, they are investing in the bigger hotel developments that are coming in. And so they are trying to squeeze out the little people. And I am getting my feet wet in political avenues because I'm showing up more for meetings and speaking more at our town meetings and giving us hosts a voice because it's needed to do this business. And I don't believe in property infringements. So
there you go.
There we go. I'll climb down from my soapbox real gently. Don't mind me. I don't hear Parker.
I don't think we can hear you, Parker.
Oh,
Let's
sorry.
see.
There we go. Sorry.
Boom. She's back.
I'm back. So with the regulation, so with the growth of short-term rentals out there in those counties and those areas, I mean, I know it's kind of been slow and steady, which is nice, and nice that it's spread out. Are you seeing any pushback on it, or people accepting it, or does it kind of just depend on the areas?
For the most part, I don't see county pushback in the smaller towns. They are very supportive of us. I do a lot of work with multiple tourism directors and board members, and just knowing, the tourism transient tax alone pays for so much, and, pushing that out, that we pay for would kind of cut their nose off, spite their face type thing. And so, we all understand that a well-hosted property is what's most important. We want to respect our neighbors regardless, and it can be a happy venture for everybody. If you've got neighbors, talk to them. And it's funny because I've had clients who have gone to their meetings and had neighbor opposition. I've had neighbor opposition myself, but it's the funniest thing because usually the people who oppose end up being your best advocate. They begin helping you with your property. They are your eyes on your property when you're not there. They cut your grass and, like help take care of things and bring your packages in. And so, build those relationships, has been my best advice for people with a neighbor. Some of our properties are in semi-rural areas, and you might have a neighbor 5 acres away or 10 acres away, but still, get to know who they are. And I think that that's just best business practice.
That's cool. So we spoke a lot about a lot of positives. So can you give us, what are some challenges?
When it snows 10 inches like it did 2 weeks ago. Oh gosh, challenges.
Well, the snow is a serious one. So I guess it snows a lot out there.
No, not really. So that was just an irregular snow that we had, and every 5, 7, 8 years we get a dump of snow like that. And
Okay.
so this year was that year, and so that was we had a guest hook up a water hose and left it, and it burst the pipe.
Yeah.
It's the little things, just staying on top of things, helping guests navigate if they're still going to come and they're going to, be there for their reservation, just telling them ahead of time, just making sure that they've seen the forecast, preparing the property, salt and things like that, letting them know if there is a power outage, things that they can do, where the flashlights are and things like that. So just being on top of it ahead of time when things like that do happen. But again, like I said, it's every 5, 7, 8 years that something like that happens. I think being a good host and making sure that your property is just overall well maintained, it leads to very few challenges because I hardly ever talk to my guests. They get their welcome message, they get their checkout message. In between, it's very little communication. They might ask me for a good restaurant or something like that. But other than that, it's, the property is well maintained. So I'm not dealing with a guest, that's unhappy that something's broken or janky or something like that. So, and I think that's another reason why I love this market so much. And clients love this market. I've got several clients who are buying their second and third properties in this market because it's been so good to them and they're seeing the benefits of it.
And you just said something key there. Whenever, as a lender, being able, because I work with a lot of people, a lot of clients with properties all over, but one of my key indicators to a strong market is when multiple clients are purchasing multiple properties. So, like, for example, like the Smokies, multiple properties. I'm seeing that in Kentucky, Gulf Shores, even the Panhandle of Florida, which maybe isn't as great now as it used to be. But then there's some places too, like Orlando. I don't typically get clients that buy more than one in Orlando. It's just maybe a good market, but it's a tough market. I don't think it's very fun for a lot of people to manage there. But to your point, so that's a pattern I look for is, are people purchasing more after they've purchased one in this market? Because that speaks volumes.
Hey, real quick question. So is this a seasonal market? Is it a year-round market? What kind of market is this, Kentucky?
It's the Bourbon Trail itself is a very year-round market. Bourbon doesn't have a season.
Bourbon does not have a season.
Bourbon doesn't have a season. And so we slow down just a smidge in January and February. But I personally, over my own properties and other properties that I manage and help clients with, I haven't seen anything drop below 45, 50% occupancy. And I think Parker could vouch for that. She has seen my books and other people's here. So I'm not just fudging saying this. And then come March, we jack back up, and March to November, it's boom. Tons of bookings, and it's, so yes, very much so a year-round market.
Is drive to, is airport, like how people are getting there?
They have to have a car regardless once they get here. So whether they drive here from Ohio or Michigan or whatever, or they fly in, they have to have a rental car, because the distilleries aren't like walking distance unless you're in Louisville. And even then it's kind of difficult. So the distilleries are in clusters. So every single one of these towns has 3 to 6 or 7 distilleries, but you have to drive to them. And even if you're here for the Derby or another event, you still need a car. So it's, they might be 10 minutes apart, they might be 30 minutes apart. But, for instance, if your guest books a property in Frankfurt, that's our state capital, that's where Buffalo Trace is, that's the most visited distillery in America. So if they are staying in Frankfurt, they're going to drive over to Bardstown. That's an hour away almost. Bardstown is known as the bourbon capital of the world, but they're going to spend their day there. And so they're going to get up early. They're going to drive to Bardstown, spend their day there, do their thing, drive back to Frankfurt. And then the next day they're going to go to Lawrenceburg or Shelbyville or someplace else, spend their day there. Then the next day, get up and do it all over again. We're seeing a lot of returning guests because they realize that they can't do as many of the distilleries as they wanted to while they were here, or they see other things in places that they want to visit. And so they may come in the spring and then they book another trip in the fall or around the holidays or something like that. So lots of returning guests we're seeing as well.
Nice.
Very nice.
Awesome.
It's super cool.
No, it really is.
Yeah.
When are you coming, Lenny?
When are you coming, Lenny?
What's funny? I need to. I'm a big bourbon guy, and I like bourbon. Buffalo Trace is a good one. Basil Hayden is a good one. So I do, and I know we talked about it back when we were eating over there in Pigeon Ford. So
it was a dry county.
Yes.
I was like, what is this?
Yeah, you had to come back to the cabin.
You had to walk across the street to get a drink
to get some help. It is, but no, I mean, I do plan on coming. I actually have a friend that's very interested, so we're going to plan a trip. Let me ask you another question. Do people usually, I guess 2 questions. One, because I know you said they're older, so are they coming just as adults only, or they're bringing their entire family if they got, younger kids, and like what are people renting? Are they renting, mostly like 2-bedroom places or 3-bedroom places, or like what's the most popular?
It's usually couples who are traveling together and groups of men who are traveling together. We don't see that many families with children just because there's absolutely nothing for them to do at a distillery. And you wouldn't be able to go on an actual tour really with a child, so we're not really seeing people bring their 7-year-old, 12-year-old, anything like that. Or if we do see people with kids, it's usually the people who have just had a baby like a couple of months ago, and they're learning how to adapt parenthood into their world of still loving bourbon, or they still want to travel. And so having a pack and play in the closet is important. Having a basket of toys for boys and girls is important. But outside of that, I know many other markets, you want to have a high chair and all the kids things and things like that. But for us, we don't really see that many families with children. And I personally love that. I have kids. I know what that looks like. I want to skip the spilled Kool-Aid and sticky fingers and things like that. So on that note, you do want to allow dogs, because people travel with their dogs, and the distilleries allow dogs at the distilleries. So they bring their dogs, but they're not left at the home all day while they're gone. So they're taking them with them. Really? So it is important here to truly be pet friendly and to allow them.
Cool.
Interesting.
Right. And back to your question, I skipped over. So 1 and 2 bedrooms are usually for just 1 or 2 couples. And then bigger groups, they want the larger properties that sleep more. And, when we first got started, our first couple houses were only 3-bedroom homes. And I was being told by groups of people that they had to rent 2 houses because my properties at that time weren't large enough for their group. And it's not really that they're having a party or anything, but they're just,
So many people going.
10, 12, 14 people who are traveling together. I don't know that many people who had want to travel together, but and sleep in the same house. But hey, I don't know. But they do. And so now we have just this past year been able to buy some larger properties, and I'll report back next year.
There you go. All right. So we have a question for you. What does find your freedom means to you?
Oh gosh. It means a lot of different things to me. Last year was really crazy for me in my business. I took a lot of time away from my family to help other people build their portfolios and things. So finding my freedom is something that 2025, I think, is going to look different for us. We're kind of circling back around to us and, building our family, our legacy. We're building our portfolio. So putting our kids into that and helping them. I think you've had a couple of conversations with Andrew about financial literacy with kids.
Yep.
And I homeschool my 11-year-old, and I just started him with a financial literacy workbook and some just online pieces. And that's his favorite thing is financial literacy. And he is not a math kid. So it's just super important for us to build this out in a way that benefits our family, but not taking away from them.
That's awesome.
That's great. I love that. Obviously, I have a kids real estate financial literacy academy, so I'm trying to just be okay. But I'm over here like, oh man, that's great. So the inner me is saying that, but no, that's great to hear, and I want more people to hear it because, truth be told, is none of these things were provided to us. And none of these things are being provided even today.
No.
And where I see they're being provided, it's like, I see you trying to do something, but it ain't really stick to Shakespeare. Like, for what you're trying to do, keep Shakespeare in that slot, but I am happy that, you're, teaching your kid about financial literacy, because I tell everybody, look, money is not everything. But you need it.
It makes things easier.
It gives you options. And that's what money does. So money is a tool to make more money, but more importantly, it allow you to have more options, because all of us do the same thing. Look, Toni, you fly an airplane, I fly an airplane, Parker's flying an airplane. Toni, you drive a car, Parker drives a car, I drive a car. But the options are how you fly. Some people fly private. Some people fly coach. Some people fly first class. Some people drive a Honda Accord. Some people drive a Mercedes-Benz. Some people drive a Bentley, So it's just, and then the choices, even for myself, I have an 86-year-old mother, and she has doctor appointments. She's not sickly, thank God, but she does have doctor's appointments due to her age. And it allows me to sit here and ensure that I can take her to her doctor appointments, which ultimately is important. And when you don't have those type of options, you start feeling something in your heart, and you start to get stressed because of the things that you really want to do, and you start to feel bad, and that clutters any type of clarity that's required to build any type of business. If that's a short-term rental business, if that's a donut shop that you want to sit there and build, and it does. So, but Toni, a lot of people are going to hear this episode. A lot of people are going to be shocked about what Kentucky, brings and has to offer, and the affordability that's there, and the things that you can do. And they're going to want to get in contact with you. So if you could share any and every way that someone can get in contact with you so they can be their next purchaser in Kentucky.
I'm on Facebook as myself, Toni Boer. You can DM me. You can reach out to me via email, or I'm on Instagram as BNB_LDY, BNB lady. And that's probably the quickest, fastest way. And then I'll give you my phone number so we can schedule a call and get you on the Bourbon Trail.
Cool. And just to be clear, you could be anywhere in the country to contact you, correct? Doesn't matter where you are, Florida, Pennsylvania, California,
That's right. I have
Michigan.
clients in all of those states.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Awesome. So we're coming to an end of the show. Getting a little sad here because there's some things that we want to talk about. We also want to have you on. We'll have actually you and Andrew on, at the same time because
Yes.
we look at the both of you as a power couple that's in the market. And a lot of people sit there and want to know how the husband and the wife thing works and how, maybe they wasn't on the same page at one time and they got on the page and that journey. So, if it's okay, I'm pretty sure Andrew's going to be in. So, so
I'll
I'm
speak
asking the
for him, yes.
boss right now, Tony, is it all right that you guys
Yes.
come back? All right, cool. So right now, what we're going to do a big boom session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count to 3, 1, 2, 3. And in a uniform manner, all 3 of us going to say boom and hold it as long as we can. I get some thumbs up when you're ready. All right, listeners, we about to rock and roll. Turn your volume down. Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Boom! Awesome. Check this out. We just had a fantastic episode with Toni, and she educated us on a market that's not so popular. A lot of people might know the markets from the Monopoly game, just like me, but no, it's real things that's there. And the great thing about it is that the properties there are affordable compared to other rental places in the country, and the returns are showing, and you don't need all the fancy things that you need in a lot of these other places to be successful. So I strongly suggest that you contact Toni, not now, but right now, to get on her list, because I'm sure she's going to be busy, but she takes time for all of her clients. She breaks it down to come out and she shows her personal hospitality, you can just learn from that on saying, hey, that's how you should, run your property. She'll show you around town. She'll show you some great places. And of course, she'll show you some properties that's going to meet your goals. All right. So reach out to Toni, not now, but right now. And we also need you to leave an honest 5-star review, because that's how we get more Tonis on board to share information that you just don't know about. Look, everybody here is stressing about the property values of these homes. And Toni just mentioned in between 300 and 700,000, you can find a nice property that's going to give you some nice returns. And at this point in time, that is very affordable when it comes to comparing to other markets. So, and we need to bring more individuals on our platform. That's why we ask for the honest 5-star review. And also share this. Let everybody know. Share it with your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle. Share with all your coworkers, the ones that you like and the ones that you don't like. Now, until the next episode of Find Your Freedom, we talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Find Your Freedom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, please help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review and sharing the podcast with friends, family, and colleagues. Until next time, get out there and find your freedom.